Hello, and welcome to Season 8 of the Canadian Women's Foundation podcast, All Right, Now What? Gender equality and justice, where we live, work, learn, and play is the goal, and it makes life better for everyone. All Right, Now What? Remains a space where we ask, how do we move from awareness to action? But this season, we're also shifting the story. Through powerful storytelling, expert interviews, and bold conversations, we'll explore what true equity can look like, especially for those who are too often silenced or overlooked. The work of the Canadian Women's Foundation and its partners takes place on traditional First Nations, Inuit, and Métis territories. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet and work on this land. However, we recognize that land acknowledgements are not enough. We need to pursue truth, reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship in an ongoing effort to make right with all our relations.
Hi, I'm Shagani Hamparam from the Canadian Women's Foundation. Today, we're joined by author, creator, advocate, and one of our 2026 Feminist Creator Prize judges, Libby Ward. In our conversation, Libby shares how what began as a private creative outlet on TikTok became a platform for honest conversations about motherhood, burnout, mental health, and the impossible expectations placed on women. We talk about the hidden pressures women carry, from the mental load and default parenting to the everyday ways gendered expectations continue to shape our homes, workplaces, and relationships. Libby also reflects on the power of telling the truth about motherhood, why so many women blame themselves for challenges that are actually systemic, and how sharing her story helped countless others feel less alone. Together, we explore what happens when women stop shrinking themselves to meet impossible standards, why rest and joy are not things we need to earn, and how honest storytelling can help us build a more compassionate and equitable world. Well, welcome, Libby. Thank you so much for being on our podcast. We're huge fans. Obviously, we know you just through work that we've done throughout the years. You've been amazing support, especially around Mother's Day and our campaign planning and all the wonderful things. But recently, you were a judge at the Feminist Creator Prize, and it was so lovely seeing you in person. And so tonight, I'm really excited, or this afternoon, I'm excited to chat with you about your latest book, Honest Motherhood. And I did want to just, again, sing your praises because in my own journey, I remember when I became a mother, my immediate reaction was, I got to find a book to read about someone else's experience. And I want it to be honest, and I want it to be, taking out all the magical fun elements and talk about the raw and honest and sometimes not so great stuff. And so I wanted to let you know that your book was very much the book I needed at that time. And I'm so grateful for kind of future mothers to be able to have that option to read. And so, yeah, great job. And we're going to dive into it more. But first, I do want to start off by talking a little bit about your journey into this. So you are a creator, you're an advocate, and you're very well known on kind of speaking on honest motherhood and changing the narrative that's out in the public. When did you first recognize that you needed to be a part of this space and lend your voice to something like this?
I would say it wasn't until after I started being a part of the conversation. I think when I started sharing online on TikTok in 2020, when I thought that nobody would find me because millennials weren't on TikTok and it could be my secret little corner of the world where I could explore these new sides of myself and new learnings and like evolution of myself. Back when I thought no one would find me and I was saying all the hard things that I'd kind of kept inside because other moms weren't really talking about them, it was mostly just for my own creative outlet and to sort of test the waters to see, like, is this resonating with anyone? This is my experience. I can do this here without shame because I thought like my friends and family wouldn't find me. And I was blown away by the magnitude of feedback I got from women all over Canada, the States, other places in the world. Women who are saying, I am also burnt out. I'm also depressed. I'm also overwhelmed. I also blame myself for not being able to keep up with what society says it means to be a good mom and a good woman. And other women also were in this place where they're like, I don't know how to get better. There's just so many expectations. And I thought it was just me. And it wasn't until I started sharing and getting that feedback, and then I shared more and then got more feedback. It was kind of like this feedback loop of it gave me more confidence to then say more hard things out loud, which then helped other moms and women, which then helped me to say even more things. And I realized, I used to think I was the anomaly. Like I thought that other moms had everything together, that other moms were, you know, matching their kids' outfits every day and packing perfect lunches and keeping their houses clean and keeping their husbands happy and keeping all the plates spinning and being the family martyr with a smile on their face. I thought I was the only one that struggled with carrying the mental load, struggled with being the default parent, or with setting boundaries with my parents or other people in my life. I really thought, like, how does everybody else have it all figured out? And it wasn't until I started sharing and getting that feedback that I realized I'm really not the anomaly. I'm actually the norm. And a lot of women are struggling. And because of society's messages, we've blamed ourselves instead of saying, wait a second, maybe the system is actually rigged. And that's what made me think, oh no, I actually need to say this louder and into a microphone, and a lot.
I was nodding through very vigorously throughout that whole bit because I find that so relatable. It made me think to even a moment I remember when I gave birth to my daughter, and people are checking in and asking me, and I decided one day to just be like, I'm going to honestly answer this question. And I remember for like a fellow mom who just given birth maybe 6 months before I did, and I did share honestly, like, yeah, like this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I actually remember her crying, and she was like, I feel the same, and I just didn't. I like hearing you say it. And then we just started to have more honest conversations, and I was like, wow, I should start doing this more. And the amount of people where, when you're brave enough, which is what I feel your book is, when you're brave enough to go, hey, actually, here's a little secret, I haven't always done okay, and these are the things, it makes other people feel brave enough to do the same. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things with women, especially with motherhood and menopause. Those are the two things I just think like we're starting to really get under the surface. And so I am curious, as you've written your book and you think, and you're always constantly getting that feedback, what is a conversation that we still yet need to have about motherhood, that you feel like you have those conversations, but it's not this bigger conversation that we need to be having in workplaces on a policy level? What are the things that you think like, oh gosh, we're still not, we're starting to talk about some stuff, but this is one area that, hey, I wish we would be talking about a bit more?
I feel like when you share in an online space about a certain niche or topic over and over again, and you draw your people in, it can be easy to convince ourselves that this is common knowledge, that everybody understands that women and mothers are people too, that we have needs that deserve to be met, that we deserve rest, that the world treats mothers unfairly, that two things can be true, that we can love our children and also not always love motherhood. I've fallen prey to that idea that, oh, like everybody knows this. I've said it enough times and I'm surrounded by enough people that this is just common knowledge. And I would actually say, now that I've written the book and I've been out on tour and I've been talking to women and mothers, almost every day for 6 weeks now, it has become so obvious to me that the things I share online about that I've been sharing for 6 years aren't common knowledge to everybody, aren't common knowledge to the average population. And so I guess I would say there are more topics, more nuanced topics, but I still feel like there is such a long way to go for women and mothers to believe in their core that they matter and that they deserve to have their needs met, and that they don't need to just prioritize everybody but themselves. If I had to pick a topic that doesn't feel like it's talked about enough. Okay, so yesterday I got a phone call at 9 a.m. and it was from the doctor's office, and they said, hey, is Greg there? Like, Greg's my husband. I said, nope, this is his wife. And they said, oh, okay, we need to move his doctor's appointment for later today. And I said, okay, could you give him a call and do that? And they were like, oh, okay. Should we just call the number that we have on file for him? And I said, yep. And they were like, oh, okay, have a great day. And I hung up the phone and I was like, what is going on? They literally have his phone number on file, and it is his doctor appointment that he is fully capable of scheduling and rescheduling. And yet for some reason, who did they call? Me. And that is true for the school my kids go to. That is true for other doctors. That is true for family reaching out to schedule things. And so I talk a lot about gender roles in the home and about equal partnership. And my husband's great. He cooks, he cleans, he plans meals. He's really involved with our kids. He's empathetic, he's emotionally intelligent, all of those things. And yet, the thing that we don't talk about when it comes to gender norms and expectations is everybody else's way of interacting with us and the pressure that women feel to keep managing the mental load and keep the household running and keep doing all the little administrative things that are quote unquote women's work. So even if I have a partner that says and believes, hey, you don't need to do all this. I'm going to do this. Like my husband has been the family admin for 2 years now. He books most of the appointments. He, signs the kids up for soccer, all of that. It almost, not that it doesn't matter, but it almost doesn't matter when everybody else around us is texting me for play dates, for Christmas, for what are we going to do Halloween night, for birthday parties, when I'm the one that gets texted, even if he's in charge, even if we've communicated that to our village and our people and our, the different professionals in our life, it's still assumed that it's women's work. And that is a conversation that is not being had nearly enough. That even if you have an individual partner who sees you as an equal, and it's still work to keep that going, even if you have that, the way the rest of the world treats us still puts a load on women's shoulders that's really hard to describe.
I love that, and I resonate so much with it because it is, in kind of even a broader conversation of gender equality, it is these micro things that happen day to day that we don't realize we all play into. Because often I think when we think of, to your point, motherhood, it's maybe these bigger things about, parental leave and all those things, but you don't think about these day to day, in a way, microaggressions that are sort of contributing, and everyone participates in subtle ways. And I actually thought of a story when I was taking my daughter to a dance class, like at a community center. And I remember a mom and a dad brought their kid. And essentially the dad realized as he had walked in, he had accidentally brought mud into the gym, like a little dirt. So him being a responsible adult sees a broom in the corner of the room and goes, cleans up his dirt. And, and another mother in the room turns to his, partner and says, wow, I can't believe you have such a great husband. And she kind of looked confused because she was like, what's happening? And I remember that staying with me of like, wow, the bar is so low that,
The bar is like in hell. We're like, a man just does the basics and they are praised as being the world's best dad. And yet we do the exact same thing and it's seen as either subpar or just the basics, like it's not even acknowledged. And I think the part that we don't talk about is the resentment that it builds. And people love to make fun of women for being naggy or being frustrated or being resentful or being snippy or being mad about little things. But it's like you said, all these little microaggressions, all these little things that happen all day, every day that add to this pressure that we have a higher bar to reach with lower reward, and we're just expected to just deal with it. We're expected to be the caregivers for our aging parents. That's a woman's role, by society standards. We are held to a higher standard for how clean our houses are. Like if someone comes to my house and it's not clean, their first thought isn't, oh, this whole family is messy, or, the husband in this house isn't like pulling his weight. It's shame on me. And then I'm the one that has to carry that shame or that questioning or that, not enoughness. And yet I am one person that lives in this house. And that's in so many areas. If my husband shows up to soccer on the wrong night, everyone can just laugh and giggle like, oh, that's a dad, no big deal. But if I show up on the wrong night, then there's a different level of shame that comes with that. And it's that I think just wears us down. And so many women end up gaslighting themselves, being like, what's wrong with me? Instead of looking out and being like, what is wrong with everyone else for expecting me to reach this bar?
That's why. And I got your book in. I rarely do this, I swear. I like highlighted and I was like making notes. And one of the parts that I was like, oh, because I think about this all the time, especially even more broadly at our work at the foundation, it was the idea of just, and I'm paraphrasing, but just the idea of, we blame ourselves and we look, and it seems like an individual responsibility. when in reality, one, there's a whole now industry that markets or profits off of burnout, wellness, all the things. And it's kind of framed in a way that you could be doing better. These are all the things that can help you do better, instead of recognizing, no, you're set up to fail. You're in a system that's set up to fail, and you're not equipped. You don't have the right support. Our society's not set up for it. And it's such a powerful switch. And yet I think a lot of people still don't have that belief of like, hey, it's actually not me. I'm doing the things. It's actually, I'm not set up to do those. And so I think about it, especially for women that are working. And, you talked about this in your book, that it's not often the option that you can, just not work because you have bills to pay. And I guess in a workplace setting, because, I guess now you're your own boss. And I remember having a conversation with a colleague where we're talking about entrepreneurs, and we're like, yeah, like all these women entrepreneurs, it's amazing. And my colleague had pointed out, well, the reality is there's also a sadness to that, because the reality is a traditional workforce is not supportive for women, especially for not mothers. So then what their only alternative is to become their own boss. So as empowering as that is in some level, it is also horrible in another way, because it's sort of like you're not actually giving them the option to choose as much as it's been forced on them. So I am curious, in your experience, what would you say are, conversations around the workplace? Like, how can especially caregivers, mothers and caregivers in the workplace, be better supported?
I mean, we could talk about policies, but we could also just talk about general expectations for women and men, where, it's assumed that if a child has an appointment, mom is going to take the day off. And if they're in a heterosexual relationship, dad isn't. And, if dad takes the day off, like it's just seen as completely differently. And so I think the conversations that need to be happening in workplaces and the changes that need to be happening are like equalizing the playing field in terms of time off to be a family person, to care for your children, to have enough sick leave to not have the same number of sick days for, a mom with multiple children than maybe somebody without, any children, like to take, family things into consideration, to take, I mean, even things about our periods, like we are just expected to just carry on no matter what. Sometimes I look at my husband, or I just like think about men in the world. I'm like, what it would be like to have consistent, like lack of pain levels and like hormones and all of those things. And not in a way that workplaces and society can just, excuse things. But at the same time, it's like, can we acknowledge the actual lived reality for half of the population, that for a week out of every month, we're literally bleeding and in pain, and that affects things. And that maybe during the other weeks when that isn't happening and we're more productive, we're actually getting more done. And so like giving more leeway to women to make some of their own work hours, and trust that women, I mean, I feel like it doesn't need to be said, we're hardworking. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like we get more done in, a bathroom trip than some guys get done all day. I feel like just like changing the conversation around like trust and hours and workload. So many women are breaking themselves for their families, for their workplaces, trying to keep all the plates spinning. It's not like they're sitting around just hanging around at home. It's like we're having to force, like the women in my communities online, I over and over and over and over have to say to them, you do not have to earn rest. And we have women who have been conditioned to believe that they should be productive 100% of the time. And it's like, maybe workplaces should assume the best intent of women and allow them to make their own work hours, and allow them to have time off and to get the job done in the best way that they can. And if that means sometimes working from home and sometimes working in the office, like having more flexibility and acknowledging that life isn't just work, and that when we are whole people who have our needs met, we're gonna do better at work as well.
I feel like the pandemic in some ways was a starting of this positive conversation around flexibility and working from home. Obviously, it didn't apply to obviously all sectors. But yeah, as we sort of move back into this post-pandemic world, I hope we don't lose some of those learnings and realizations. And to your point about women, I was just laughing through your whole thing about women kind of expected to work through everything, which is why the menopause conversation I think is related, because a lot of women are having children later, but then they're going through the perimenopause symptoms at the same time. And so, yeah, it's a new frontier, I think, to be having a conversation of, instead of this being hush hush, which is what I would say the generation previous to me probably did, which is go to work and suffer in silence. How do we change that for kind of the upcoming generation and future generations? And so I'm very curious to see that. One thing you said, and I loved, when you're talking about your online community, it sounds like a very beautiful thing to be able to have a network online where people from all over can share and, like you said, get that feedback. And so I do want to shift to kind of understanding your experience as a digital creator. So like I said, you were part of the Feminist Creator Prize as one of our judges, and you are part of creating community. You're uplifting folks, you're talking about issues that are often overlooked. So I guess, what's the positive of being able to do that type of work, but what's also kind of harder for female creators than it might be for other creators online right now?
Oh my goodness. I mean, sharing online personally has changed my life, not just because it's given me a career, but because of what I shared earlier, and that it's helped me to realize that I'm absolutely not alone and that my experiences are unfortunately quite universal. And there's a lot of women in the same boat. And it really helps to not just help me feel less alone, but be more confident, be more bold, say hard things out loud, and then reach more women and get the message out there that I'm trying to share with the world, which is that you matter as a woman, as a mother, and it's important to live as though that is the truth. It's made, I mean, I still get messages to this day. It's been 6 years, and I still get messages from people who say, "You're the first person who's ever said this thing out loud. Out loud. You're the first person who's ever made me feel like it's okay to say that I don't always enjoy motherhood, or it's okay to want to break for my children." And that warms my heart and breaks my heart at the same time, that I'm the first person who said that. And so there's a lot of good that comes, like, on this book tour that I've been on. I've met so many people who said, you changed my life. You helped me save my marriage. You helped me be a better mom. And that is an incredible privilege. It's also an incredible responsibility. And it also does come with a lot of negatives as well. I mean, to speak to the entrepreneur side of things, I mean, I have raging ADHD, right? I am a highly creative person. I can be very disorganized. I can be very, narrow minded. I didn't have any experience in the business world prior to starting to share online. And so when my account blew up, it became this duality of, oh, this is so cool. And also, this is the most overwhelming thing I've ever experienced in my life, to get feedback from so many people at once who have different intentions, different reasons for reaching out, who either want to work with me or want to send me hate messages. Like, there is just so much information coming at me that I have to try and navigate, and I have to create my own structures and systems, and while trying to be a mother and while trying to lead this community. And I'm held to a higher standard now, especially because I advocate, because I talk about mental health, because I talk about morality and justice and advocacy. There is a certain level of expectation that I am held to, and in many ways, rightfully so. It's important to use your voice and, like, speak truth and do the right thing, but there is a pressure that comes with that. And then the other negative is, it really shows me how much of an issue we have with misogyny and the negative impacts of patriarchy, and the real issue with rage-filled men who hate women, and make that very well known in my comment section. And I've come to a place where I can see those comments, and I can either sort of have a buffer, or I realize that it's their own issue. But what really concerns me is the harm it does to the women in my community who are reading their comments, to the women who are dating those men or married to those men, or those men are their brothers. It Every time it shocks me and fills me with horror that there are so many men out there who hate women and who believe that they don't matter, and that they are just a body, and that they're disposable, and they belong in the kitchen, and all of those things. It breaks my heart to think that the women who follow me are, maybe, married to these men. And it's no wonder women blame themselves. It's no wonder women gaslight themselves. It's no wonder women think, oh, well, I shouldn't want to take a break. I chose to be a stay-at-home mom. I shouldn't want to take a break. I didn't get that much done today. Meanwhile, they've been on their feet all day caring for their children. Or I shouldn't spend money on myself because, my partner is the one that makes all of the money. Um, it's a real issue, and it's kind of a blessing and a curse when I see all of these comments and DMs come in. It's a blessing because it actually like ignites this fire in me to want to say it more and say it louder and be like, no, like this is not acceptable. And it's a curse in that I know that there are women reading those messages that just remind them, oh, maybe that is my place. Oh, maybe he is right. Women who are really in dark circumstances and, have a hard time sort of stepping out of it and like having self-worth. So yeah, there's a lot of good. I kind of say it's like everything. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad that come with it. And it just takes a lot to, regulate myself and keep like a balanced perspective and care for myself. And even like, I talk about motherhood and how sometimes we gaslight ourselves and we don't realize how much work we're putting into caring for our children and how valuable that is. Like we sort of write off the amount of work it is. And yet I still kind of do that in terms of the content I make. Like all of the content I make is free. I don't live in the States where you get paid for views. Like I am constantly putting out content for free. I'm doing emotional labor. I'm reading DMs. There's no fourth wall like in a therapy room. I'm, reading people's trauma in my DMs, and I'm constantly bearing this emotional load and creating content to educate or inspire or entertain or whatever. And it does take a lot. And yet I can sort of sometimes be like, oh, like, Libby, you chose this. Like it's not that big, or it's like it's not a real job. I know it's a real job and I know it's hard work, but sometimes I can sort of look at myself like, why is this so hard for you? But if it's someone else, I'm like, of course it's hard for you. That's a lot to take on.
I think what you're speaking to is the unpaid labor, right? Which is like all these things that, yes, society doesn't necessarily put a monetary value behind, but it doesn't mean like there's so much of what you're saying, that mental, emotional labor that keeps communities, families, like it's such the backbone of that. And that's the hard part of not being able to, again, in a capitalistic world, not being able to assign a dollar value to that.
So I released a book 6 weeks ago. In the last 4 weeks, I have had multiple brands and organizations reach out asking me to speak at either an in-person or a virtual event and make content to promote that. And these are brands that have money, that have budget. They are for profit. And all but one have wanted me to do the work completely pro bono. And one of them completely undercut me by, they wanted to pay far less than half my rate. And also for me to add in lots of promotional content on top of it. And it's something we don't talk about enough, that the knowledge and expertise and time that it takes to work in this industry is immense. And I know that I have a skill set, and I know that I have a talent, and I know that my voice matters and it reaches people in the right way. And that's why they want to work with me. And yet it doesn't seem to be matched by any dollar value. I feel like this industry, and especially women in this industry, are really not valued in that way. And it's like, I can't just work for free. And yet, because I'm an advocate, because I care about mental health, because I'm trying to make a difference, because there are, I'm a business person, but there's a lot of altruistic reasons why I do this work. It's assumed, okay, well, then you'll do it for free. If you cared about women, then you would just do it for free. And I don't know, it is just wild to me how common it is to underpay women in this industry for the work that they do and to undervalue the emotional and invisible labor that we do.
And it's also devaluing the skill set, right? Because the thing that you have access to is your community is built on trust that you have fostered and built time into. And that's the power, but it is sort of that soft, I hate that term, but you know what I mean? The soft skills that people don't value as much as these other things. So I'm appalled hearing that. I definitely have heard so many times from various other friends of, being asked to speak for free, but then a male counterpart is getting paid for that same. So again, to me, it goes back to, which very much connects to motherhood and even what you're speaking to, of just women in general, the value we place on certain things and the value we don't, and then how folks individually internalize that. I want to end on a happy note. I always feel like I do these and then people share, and it's, and I know you're obviously doing this work because I assume and I hopefully that there's still hope on kind of the other side of this. You've seen this was the theme at the Feminist Creator Prize. This is where I get it from, because I always think about this for myself too. So I am curious what, if you did the card at the event, what gives you hope right now in making you believe that things are possible, and what gives you joy?
Okay, I'll start with what gives me joy, because I feel like it ties back to so much of the healing work that I've done. Like in my book, I do talk about the social expectations on women and mothers, but it really ties into my own self-worth and my own trauma and my own histories, and how I began to believe that I was responsible for everybody else's feelings and emotions, and fixing everyone else and fixing everything and being productive and being the girl who can spin the plates. And I've come to a place in my healing journey where, for the first time, I think maybe ever, I absolutely know that I deserve joy and goodness, not because I've earned it. And that feels like a huge leap. And I'm at a place now where I do things just for myself, whether it's pottery or a walk or a weekend away or laying in the backyard, reading in my hammock, just because I enjoy them, and not because I'm trying to get better, or not because I'm trying to fix someone, or not because I'm trying to change something, which might sound counterintuitive, but it's not. Because I finally know and believe in my core that when I am my most whole self, I just deserve it, period. And also, I can serve my family and contribute to my community and advocate better because of it. And that makes me so joyful that I can just participate in things that bring me joy simply because. And I know that's something a lot of women struggle with. And I would just encourage anyone listening to this that you deserve to feel joy simply because, not because you have to make a change or you need to be better, simply because you deserve it. And what gives me hope is meeting other women who are doing all the small, regular, everyday things that keep their bodies well and their families healthy and their workplaces going, and, checking their parents' medication. It gives me so much hope that there has been a change in conversation, and women are starting to value their needs, and they are, we are beginning to look at one another and lean on one another and share our stories and take care of ourselves better. And it changes the whole narrative for other women. And I think there really is this massive domino effect that's happening right now that can be hard to acknowledge when it feels like the world's on fire. It does feel like the world's on fire because the world is on fire. And yet when you speak to individual women who are leaning into their anger and asking what it's telling them, and leaning into prioritizing themselves and making change, you realize that there is change happening, and it's really exciting and inspiring. And I think the domino effect will continue to happen.
Thank you for helping shift the story on safety, leadership, justice, power, and rights. You can visit CanadianWomen.org today to learn more and stay connected. We believe everyone should be able to exist without fear of harassment or abuse. You can help make that a reality. Text SAFE, SAFE, to 20222 to give $10 and support women, girls, and gender diverse people throughout Canada. Small actions can lead to big changes. We appreciate your support.